There is a strange moment that happens right before your life starts falling apart. It is not dramatic. No one notices it. You do not wake up and decide to ruin your future. You just delay one small thing. You ignore one message. You skip one workout. You avoid one uncomfortable conversation. You tell yourself, I will do it later. And somehow, later becomes a lifestyle. That is how people lose themselves. Not in one massive failure, but in tiny moments of surrender that look harmless while they are happening. And the most dangerous part is this. Your brain starts believing that avoiding the thing is safer than facing it. So your room gets messy. Your confidence gets weaker. Your body feels heavier. Your dreams start feeling embarrassing. And your future becomes something you think about only when you are lying awake at 2 a.m., wondering how you became this version of yourself. But there is a rule that can interrupt this entire pattern. It is not glamorous. It is not easy. And it will not magically fix everything overnight. But if you use it honestly, it can rebuild the way you see yourself. The 10-minute rule is simple. When you are avoiding something that matters, do it for just 10 minutes. Not 1 hour. Not the whole project. Not your entire life transformation. Just 10 minutes. Because most people do not fail because they are lazy. They fail because their mind turns every important task into a monster. Cleaning your room becomes, my life is a mess. Studying becomes, I am behind everyone. Going to the gym becomes, I have no discipline. Starting a business becomes, what if I fail and prove I was never special? So you do not avoid the task. You avoid the emotion attached to the task. That is the hidden reason most people stay stuck. They think they have a time management problem. But often, they have an emotional resistance problem. The task is small. The shame around the task is huge. And when shame grows bigger than action, people freeze. This is why advice like, just be disciplined, often does not work. Because discipline is not just forcing yourself. Discipline is learning how to move while your emotions are trying to negotiate with you. Your comfort zone is not really comfortable. It is familiar. There is a difference. A messy life can feel familiar. Low confidence can feel familiar. Being ignored can feel familiar. Procrastination can feel familiar. And the brain often chooses what is familiar over what is good. That is why change feels threatening even when you know you need it. You are not only changing your habits. You are challenging your identity. If you have spent years seeing yourself as someone who quits, delays, avoids, or hides, then one small act of responsibility feels like rebellion. And that rebellion begins with 10 minutes. You open the document for 10 minutes. You walk outside for 10 minutes. You clean one corner for 10 minutes. You read one page for 10 minutes. You practice speaking clearly for 10 minutes. You sit with your emotions for 10 minutes instead of running to your phone. And something strange happens. The task does not look as terrifying once you enter it. The fear was loudest at the door. This is human nature. Before action, the mind imagines pain. During action, the mind starts collecting evidence. Evidence that you can move. Evidence that you are not helpless. Evidence that the old story about you may not be completely true. And this is where confidence actually comes from. Not from telling yourself you are powerful. Not from watching motivational videos. Not from waiting until you feel ready. Confidence is built when you keep promises to yourself. Especially small promises. Because your mind is always watching you. It watches when you say, tomorrow I start, and then you do not. It watches when you say, I will stop texting that person, and then you go back. It watches when you say, I am serious now, but your actions stay the same. And slowly, you stop trusting your own words. That is one of the quietest forms of self-destruction. You lose self-respect not because you failed once, but because you repeatedly abandoned yourself in private. The 10-minute rule repairs that relationship. Not with a speech. With proof. Imagine someone who feels socially awkward. They want confidence, but they avoid people. They wait for the day they magically become charismatic. But charisma is not born in isolation. So their 10 minutes might be starting one conversation, making one phone call, practicing eye contact, recording themselves speaking. Not because 10 minutes turns them into a master communicator, but because it teaches their nervous system, I can survive being seen. Imagine someone who wants discipline. Their life is scattered. They keep making big plans and quitting after 3 days. Their 10 minutes might be making their bed, writing tomorrow's plan, or doing one focused work sprint without touching their phone. Small? Yes. But small is not weak. Small is how trust begins. Imagine someone trapped in emotional attachment. They know a person is not good for them, but they keep checking their phone, hoping for a message that gives them temporary relief. Their 10 minutes might be sitting with the urge without acting on it. 10 minutes of not chasing. 10 minutes of not begging. 10 minutes of choosing dignity over dopamine. That may sound simple. But for someone addicted to emotional chaos, 10 minutes of self-control can feel like war. And that is the point. You do not rebuild your life by waiting for life to become easy. You rebuild it by becoming the kind of person who can do one honest thing while it is still hard. Most people misunderstand growth because they think transformation should feel inspiring. But real transformation often feels uncomfortable, boring, lonely, and strangely quiet. No applause. No dramatic music. Just you, doing the thing you said you would do, while a weaker part of you tries to talk you out of it. That is the battlefield. Not the gym. Not the office. Not the classroom. The real battlefield is the 10 seconds before you begin. Because once you begin, the mind loses some of its power. Avoidance needs distance to survive. Action destroys distance. This is why 10 minutes can be so powerful. It bypasses the mind's excuses. Your brain can argue against 2 hours. It can argue against changing your entire life. But 10 minutes? That is harder to reject. And once you start, momentum begins. Not always. Some days, you will stop after 10 minutes. That is still a win. Because the goal is not perfection. The goal is identity repair. You are teaching yourself, I am someone who begins. And a person who begins has power. A person who begins can learn. A person who begins can recover. A person who begins can become dangerous to their old limitations. But if you ignore this, the cost is not just missed opportunities. The cost is psychological. Every avoided task becomes a small vote for helplessness. Every broken promise becomes evidence against your own character. Every escape into comfort makes discomfort look more terrifying next time. And eventually, you do not just avoid work. You avoid your own potential because it reminds you of the person you have not become yet. That pain is heavy. But it is also useful. Because pain is often the signal that something inside you still cares. If you truly did not care, you would feel nothing. The frustration you feel is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that there is still a part of you that refuses to accept this as the final version of your life. So start there. Not with a 5-year plan. Not with a fantasy identity. Not with a perfect morning routine. Start with the next 10 minutes. Choose one thing you are avoiding. Make it specific. Not fix my life. Clean the desk. Send the message. Open the book. Walk outside. Write the first paragraph. Delete the app for the next 10 minutes. Sit in silence instead of escaping. And before you begin, say this to yourself. I do not need to feel ready. I only need to prove I can start. That sentence matters. Because waiting to feel ready is one of the most polished excuses the mind ever created. Readiness often comes after action, not before it. Clarity often comes after movement. Confidence often comes after evidence. And self-respect often comes after doing the small thing you were tempted to avoid. There is a deeper truth here. Your life is not built mainly by the big decisions people see. It is built by the tiny private decisions no one claps for. The decision to not quit after a bad morning. The decision to speak honestly instead of people-pleasing. The decision to work for 10 minutes when your mood says no. The decision to choose peace over drama. The decision to become responsible for your own mind. That is maturity. Not being emotionless. Not being perfect. But refusing to let every feeling become a command. You can feel afraid and still begin. You can feel tired and still take one step. You can feel insecure and still show up. You can feel the old version of yourself pulling you backward and still choose differently for 10 minutes. And those 10 minutes will not look impressive at first. But one day, you will look back and realize they were the first crack in the wall. The wall of procrastination. The wall of shame. The wall of low self-respect. The wall of, this is just who I am. No. It is not just who you are. It is who you practiced being. And if your identity was practiced, it can be retrained. 10 minutes at a time. The goal is not to become a machine. The goal is to become someone you can trust. Someone who does not abandon themselves every time life gets uncomfortable. Someone who does not need perfect motivation to take imperfect action. Someone who understands that the future is not created someday. It is created in the next small decision. So when this video ends, do not look for another video to make you feel ready. Pick the thing. Set the timer. Give it 10 honest minutes. Because the life you want may not begin with a dramatic breakthrough. It may begin quietly, with one small act of self-respect that nobody sees. And that is enough. Because once you prove to yourself that you can start, you are no longer the same person who kept waiting. If this helped you see yourself differently, subscribe for more deep psychology and self-improvement lessons.